Well, thank you all for being here. The reason we're standing here today with a bipartisan agreement for legislative redistricting is because these four people agreed to work together and both sides embraced compromise. You know, I don't know if it's possible to understate what this accomplishment represents, and I think it is an accomplishment that Oregon can be proud of. It has been more than 60 years since the legislature last was able to draw legislative boundaries. This agreement represents the legislature at its best, finding common ground even in the face of big obstacles. This is a fair and bipartisan plan that I believe can provide Oregonians with quality representation over the next 10 years. It honors the statutory requirements and is built on dozens of hours of public testimony and input. If this agreement isn't miracle enough, perhaps an even greater miracle is that the four of us are still friends. I think over the past few months we have learned to truly work together and put our differences aside. This, of course, is not just a plan, and we are anxious to see it pass the House and the Senate and receive the governor's signature. But I am optimistic that this will become the new legislative district map for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Telfer. It's great to be with you today. It's been decades since the legislature approved a redistricting plan that was signed by the governor and enacted into law. Today's agreement represents the first step toward eliminating decades of legislative futility. It's the product of hours and hours of negotiations between redistricting co-chairs and an excellent example of how Democrats and Republicans can work together for the people of Oregon. I'm proud that the legislators here today set aside the bitter partisan acrimony that has derailed so many proposed redistricting plans in the past. We traveled across the state. We took and listened to hours of testimony from average citizens, civic leaders, and current and former legislators who know their communities very well. The process was not easy and never pretty, but we listened to each other's concerns and focused on areas where we could agree. This agreement is a significant accomplishment, but only a first step toward enacting a new legislative plan into law. It must still be approved by our committees and approved by both chambers. Thanks to the bipartisan cooperation behind this new map, I'm very confident it will be acceptable to members of both parties and citizens of Oregon. For the same reason, I'm confident that it will be acceptable by the governor. Redistricting is often described as the most partisan and political activity the legislature can undertake. With a 30-30 House and a close Senate, it's a credit to the legislators right here that are with me that we could reach this point today, and I thank them personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lindsay and Senator Telfer. We're very pleased today to announce that after a respectful and productive and long process, the four of us have reached a consensus on drawing the legislative district lines for the next decade, honoring the voters' trust in us to draw the lines in a fair, nonpartisan manner. In particular, I'd like to point to the fact that this map that we're proposing moves fewer people into new House or Senate districts than either of the initial plans that were offered earlier in the session. For the first time, Oregon will have a minority-majority district. That's in House District 22, which has a majority Hispanic population. This map has also created a Hispanic influence district in House District 57, which is now 34% Hispanic. In keeping with the statutory requirements of not diluting the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group, concentrations of Asian and African American populations have been maintained or strengthened. Oregonians should be proud of the map that's come out of this bipartisan process. And as was mentioned, this is the first step with the four of us. We still will be holding a hearing and a meeting in a committee, and looking forward to the vote on the floor of the Senate, which I expect will be a strong bipartisan vote, and watching this bill pass the Senate. So thank you for being here today. And to the Senate and the House, thank you for being here today.
I'll try to wrap this up quickly before we take questions. I want to thank my three colleagues, and I want to echo what they've said. This really is a historic moment. As they alluded to, there have been plans in the past that came through the legislature and were signed by the governor, but I believe this is the first time in history that you've actually seen the two major parties work together during the legislative process and reach a bipartisan agreement on a plan. And that's a testament to the members of our committees, as well as to the presiding officers and caucus leaders, all four, who made it clear at the beginning of the session that they were supportive of trying to get this done, and let us know that if we were able to reach an agreement, that we would have their support. So I want to thank all those who were involved. I'm very proud to be here with my colleagues today, and we're happy to take any questions you might have.
What, given the agreement you were able to reach on that, I'd be interested in your thoughts on what are the prospects for reaching agreement on a congressional plan.
We're still working on that. Obviously, based on the proposals that have been released, you can see there's a lot of disagreement about how those lines ought to be drawn, and we have spent most of our time in the last few weeks coming to an agreement on the legislative plan. We certainly have not given up on the congressional plan. We're still working on that.
Are there maps? Can we see the agreement?
Yes, there are. I believe they're
being printed.
They're being
And someone's
printed
gonna run them
now,
down.
and they will come down to this room shortly. And I believe the link is available online. Is that
I'm going to
correct?
send an email that everyone here should get.
You will receive that, and they will be available online shortly.
Also, we should be handing these out as well. This is our written press statement as well.
How big of a factor in the negotiating process was it, knowing that if you couldn't reach an agreement, it would go to Kate Brown, Senator Telfer?
You know, we always had that in the back of our mind, but we really wanted to approach this in a bipartisan way. We really did want to see a bipartisan map. I think we're the ones that were out there listening to Oregonians for weeks at a time and traveling all over the state. We're the ones that heard where their communities of interest were, and I think we really wanted to keep their one vote's important, and have Oregonians have the best representation they could in a bipartisan manner. So. Anybody else?
I'd be interested in hearing from both sides what they thought was sort of the biggest compromise they had to make, just in terms of where the lines were drawn. You can name two.
I'll take that. First of all, at this point, I don't think that we consider ourselves taking sides, because we really have seen this as a collaborative process. And it would be hard to pick. We did a lot of negotiation in a lot of districts across the state, so it would be hard to pick just a few because there were so many. There were lots of areas. I think if you looked at the high-growth areas, that's where the challenges were. And that would be obvious. The Clackamas County, Washington County, and Bend areas are where the growth was, so that's where the challenges were.
I think I largely agree with that. I would add the enormous complexity of this for one person to do this alone. I would think that a majority of the negotiations were, well, this is a better line for a community of interest. It could be a geographical line, it could be a city line, it could be a UGB line, it could be whatever sort of line. And when you move one line, everything else dominoes. I've said often, plenty of times, that it's like pushing Jell-O up a hill. You push in one area and something pops out somewhere else. This task is enormous for just one person to do, and I do think that it's somewhat miraculous that so many bodies could come together to thread this needle.
Why do you think you were able to succeed when so many other legislatures have failed before you? What was different about this time?
Well, this is my freshman term. This is the first time I've been here, and so this is kind of seen through that lens. But based on conversations, particularly with the governor, it's my understanding that in each of the redistricting periods, it was either lopsided heavily D or R. And in this case, to get things through, to get anything done, you need to incredibly work together. So I think that was one thing. On top of that, I think that you've got a pretty good team here. You've got a CPA, you've got 3 attorneys that are used to negotiating. I know that Representative Garrett and I we've done a lot of litigation, and we're used to being in heavy negotiation and settlement negotiations, and you kind of pick up some traits and qualities that maybe help that. You're able to negotiate effectively while being diplomatic through it as well. So I think, frankly, our professional backgrounds have helped out that process.
How much do the other legislators know about what districts you're proposing for them at this point?
The caucuses have all been apprised of the map. They've all had the opportunity. Well, I think most everybody, I think a few have not actually seen the map. But this morning they were all able to look at the map and start to digest their maps. So I believe all the legislators have had the opportunity to see the map now.
Have you counted votes? Do you have any sense of? I'm sorry, Senator. Did you want to?
No, I just wanted to confirm that, as far as I know, all the members of the Senate Democratic Caucus have seen the map, and they're studying it.
So do you have any sense of how well it'll fare on the floor of the House and Senate? Do you have the votes?
I hope so. I don't have a specific count for you right now. I'm going to tell you straight up that not every single person is going to be happy with this. In fact, I don't think there will be one person that is 100% happy with this. And I'm not talking just assembly members, but I'm talking other parts of the state. And I think that's where we know that we kind of hit the sweet spot, is when everybody isn't completely satisfied. You know that you got a consensus. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but there's not going to be one person that's 100% satisfied, including myself.
And I haven't counted votes, but I'm optimistic.
And in terms of the governor, have you gotten any signals from him?
We met with the governor early on and had a discussion with him, and the Governor Kitzhaber said, "Send me a bipartisan map and I'll sign it." And he said it has to be bipartisan to come out of the legislature. So I would anticipate Governor Kitzhaber will in fact sign this legislative maps.
I think you did mention that there's going to be a hearing, so there will be a chance for the public to weigh in still.
Yes, we'll be scheduling that soon.
I know one of the concerns early on was that some lawmakers had been drawn into the same districts, or they'd been moved out of their districts. What's the status on that with the 2 maps that are proposed?
Anybody want to
go for it?
I don't have an inventory. I think that a lot of those issues were mostly a product of some of the more dramatic changes that had been proposed in both sides' initial proposals. And in the course of the negotiations, many of those changes were eliminated, not for the incumbency reason, but because both sides felt that if we were going to get a plan through the legislature, a plan that makes minimal changes versus more aggressive and dramatic changes is going to have a better chance of success.
But there are some incumbents who will wind up in the same district?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so. If there are, we'll hear about it shortly.
Yeah.
If you've made the, my understanding is that there was kind of a feeling among some Republicans that the current maps favor Democrats. So if we've got new maps with minimal changes, do the new maps favor Democrats?
Well, I'd love to comment on that. There's been a lot of comment about the current map drawn 10 years ago, but I think you have to look back on 10 years and realize that we've had 2 sessions with Republican majorities in the House, 2 sessions with Democratic majorities in the House, and now we have a 30-30 split. So certainly from my point of view, that's a map that has worked that has actually proven itself to be more even-handed than some would suggest. So my desire, both from on that map and on the congressional side, was to start with those maps as a template and make whatever changes were needed, both to account for population shifts and to reach a bipartisan consensus.
And I'll make comment on that as well. And actually, I'm going to expand the scope of the topic a little bit, and that is, there are safe Democratic seats and there are safe Republican seats. And one thing that I will continue to encourage to have happen, and I'm not talking specifically about this redistricting plan, but in future legislative assemblies, is that there be more competition among districts. The statistics were, recent elections, 86% of federal House races were won by double-digit margins. Those are safe seats for either Democrats or Republicans. And I think everybody would agree with me that we want more competition. D or R, it doesn't matter. The more competition we have, the more healthy our elections are. And I'll continue to do everything I can to make elections more competitive.
Do you have the map there?
Yeah, I can put this up, and if you guys want to come look at it, I mean, maybe we could
Sure.
do it that
Representative
way. I apologize that we didn't have this sooner. But.
and Representative Garrett needed to go vote, in case people wondered.
This is the house.
Colorful, yes. And the Senate nestings, I believe, are the same as currently, so.
Is there a Senate map coming as well?
We have a Senate map coming. We do have one where we had a typo on it, but it's all right. We can put that one up. And then, like I said, I'm going to send PDFs to you as soon as we're done here and I get upstairs. So.
Yeah. Are they posted on the the committee website yet? Do you know?
They will be. We're
They will
working
be
on
shortly.
this.
Okay.
Right, just so people know, the process for converting the map to a bill involves a lot of steps, including having our GIS staff go through and make sure that every census block is assigned to a district and there aren't any areas that are not contiguous. And so that process is underway. And then it would have the files have to get sent from the legislative redistricting staff to legislative council. And the bill, if you haven't seen a redistricting bill yet, it's pages and pages and pages and pages of numbers that are all census blocks. So it's a time-consuming process. So they're in the process of beginning to check everything here so that we can get the files to legislative council to have it drafted into a bill. But when the bill is, you can't tell anything from looking at the bill. You have to look at the map.
Any idea when we'll see the bill? That'll be ready.
The bill?
Yeah.
Hopefully by the end of the week.
Anything else? We can leave this up here for a little while if you want to get real close. But like I said, I'll send that out just as soon as the link's up. So.
Thanks very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.